back to Stat 7 Sports. I am the contained Kunas, and now that we're about half a week through with free agency, as it started this past Wednesday, let's just go kind of over the remainder of what's left on the free agency basket. For the fact that it seems like nearly every single big name had gotten knocked off of free agency real quick over the first couple days between Monday and Tuesday with the legal tampering and Wednesday through Friday with all of the official signings. But really, let me make a little analogy off of this where I play fantasy football in an auction draft. Now, I know a lot of people will play just a normal draft where it's like they'll have like a 10 to 12 team league where they'll just go top 10 will pick, and then 1 through 10 will pick, then 10 through 1 will pick. And then so on and so forth until everyone has their entire team. Now, with how this is left up, the auction draft is set up to where anybody, like all teams that draft, they can pick anybody on the board through the entire NFL, and everyone in the entire league bids on that person. Everyone usually gets a set amount of money. For my league, it's $200, not real money, but $200 to end up spending on roughly 15 to 16 players and trying to build up a roster off of that. Now for free agency, early on, you're going to be going for just some mostly mid-market people to start and the big names to start. Try to get them off the board real quick. Try and get other teams that have to outbid and get them outside of their market of what they actually want to spend, to where you could get some of those little hidden gems towards the latter part of the draft. Now, but although once you get later on in the draft, a lot of people are going to get stuck with not enough money to be able to afford any of the big names left over. Now, usually the top guys are gone, but maybe a couple of the second-tier guys are still there. And for the most part, that's where this is going to be. But a lot of these people here are going to be ones that either more likely won't be able to make their value just for the fact that people don't usually have enough money to give it out to them, with maybe a couple exceptions. But at this point, a lot of players that are free agents at this point are going to have to kind of settle for maybe lesser one-year deals to be able to maybe just build to next offseason to maybe get a long-term contract. But with that being all said, I know that took a little bit of a tangent, but now we have teams with the most cap space left. So some team, like how that relates to all of this is there's going to be the vast majority of teams that have already pretty much gotten all of their free agent money that they wanted to spend out of the way, so they can't really be in the market for a lot of these players that are left over. So you only have a limited set amount of market that the rest of these top 10 players that I'm going to state are going to be available for. Roughly everyone has $21 million left. I kind of went through everyone, and some have in the 40s, some have just in the thousands, in the 100,000s. So also take into account that the league average left does not include the capital that they get for all the draft picks. So for someone who has maybe at the lowest you may have someone who has like $5 million, a little more than $5 million left on draft picks, which the lowest is the Los Angeles Rams, but they don't have many draft picks that they have to supplement because everybody gets drafted depending on round, gets a set value, where it's like you'll get like $4.5 million for a first round per year, and so on and so forth until you go down to 4th through 7th, undrafted and all that. But yeah, on average, every team is going to spend right around $8.75 million in draft capital for all their draft picks. Now, with that being said, all the ones being left with all the money, these are the ones that are more likely going to be in line for all of those free agents. Where it's like Cleveland and the Jets are the only ones above $40 million. And then you got a combination of Houston, Miami, Philly, Buffalo, Washington, Detroit, and then Indian and the Chargers bring out the top 10 of those. Now, with that being said, I'm going to make some of my projections off of this, and call me out on if any of these are wrong. I'm just going with my opinion on it and what the fit might actually work out to be. Now, with that being said, let's start with a little controversy on it, because most Saints fans are not going to be in favor of seeing this name, as it's not his fault in particular. It's the refs, but this is the one who kept the Saints out of the Super Bowl. This is the one with the non-pass interference called on him. But with that being said, I wouldn't have included him if multiple of my sources did not believe he was one of the top 10 free agents left. If I could have gone, yes, I could have gone like a Brashad Perriman out of Tampa Bay, but with this draft class coming up, he's going to get kind of washed out in the market, and he's only going to be able to, more likely to get like a 1-year, $4 million deal. So yeah, someone's going to get him for real cheap. But with Coleman, like his stats last year, 36 tackles, 7 pass deflections, 3 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. Pro Football Focus put him as a top 20 cornerback last year, where he could end up being a slot cornerback for a team, a solid slot quarterback team, or he could be like a number 2 cornerback for anyone, someone who is kind of in desperate need of a lack of secondary depth. And speaking of a team that has had a lack of defensive depth overall, mainly due to injuries, but also would be kind of not a team that is not in high regards to the New Orleans Saints. I'm predicting he's going, as I said, he's projected to take a salary hit of $5 million for teams that can afford him. Like, most teams can actually afford him, with a few exceptions, like Kansas City. Yeah. But I think he's going to Atlanta. Once they lost Desmond Trufant, and they'll probably end up bringing someone in from the draft, he's going to be a small salary cap hit. And yeah, $5 million is not going to be. It's not going to break the bank for him, even though they are on the lower percentage of their salary capital that's left. Then next, you go with a bigger name, one that surprisingly, despite all the kind of negative publicity he's had since he's been in Detroit, has still kind of put out solid stats outside of his 1 year with LA the Rams. But he's been a solid contributor for most of his career with being in Ndamukong Suh. As in last year, 43 tackles, 7 for loss, 2.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and 2 defensive touchdowns, which is honestly kind of surprising. Like, he's not going to get the interior push for more sacks that he had early on in his career with Detroit. But for one who made about $8 million a year after all the salary benefits that he got, he's probably going to get something relatively similar from whoever tries to get him. Yeah, like $8 million a year, maybe like a $5 million base salary and $3 million for like a bonus. But someone who needs some interior defensive line help, even if it's not going to be something that's going to get too much extra quarterback pressures. But, ooh, I didn't actually say where I thought it was going to go. But in that case, where would I end up seeing? But now that I think about it, I think he's probably going to end up going to somewhere in the AFC South. Probably the likes of either Indianapolis or Jacksonville. Jacksonville's kind of needed some interior help since besides franchising Ngakoue on an end, they need some D-line help outside of that. And the Colts are still very young defensively. Having someone with a little bit more experience would definitely work in their favor. So, yeah, I'll say he's going to go to Indianapolis. Now, next, here's where the ones that's going to be interesting because I have no idea where these are going to go, but the next two are ones that are going to be linked at this point because the two remaining quarterbacks that are of significance that are left on the market is Cam Newton, and I'll say next on my list being Jameis Winston. Because Cam Newton, all signs say that he's about to get cut by the Panthers and he'll become a free agent. So that's going to be a little bit the exception on this. Now, nobody knows if Cam Newton is still going to be healthy enough to play regardless of who gets him. So I could see some teams putting him with more of a value than Jameis Winston for the fact that Jameis is going to get more of a salary hit onto him because he's been healthy in his entire career. Cam Newton, he carried the ball 101 times 2 years ago. He barely played last year. But someone with his repertoire and someone that has his skill set, all his experience, I don't know if he's going to end up being he's more likely to be a starter than Jameis, I'll say. But now with everyone getting their quarterbacks off the market, it's kind of like the bargain barrel on what's left. So from everything that's left, you could always say that Cam could go to the Patriots. He could go to the Jaguars because they traded Nick Foles to the Bears. He could go to the Chargers. Those are probably your three biggest names. And for some reason they keep dangling around the name of the Redskins, even though they got Dwayne Haskins and Alex Smith and Colt McCoy to a lesser extent. But, yeah, so if they're actually going to get contracts in this offseason, I'm going to say it's going to be between those three teams, Jaguars, Patriots, and Chargers. But with that being said, and speaking of the other quarterback staying in the NFC South, we got Jameis with his league-leading passing yards, league-leading interceptions, and I've seen sources putting Jameis as a projected salary cap hit of $26.8 million. I don't know who in nine hells would ever want to do that, but at this point, he just seems like a transition piece to where really he's kind of it's going to be a 1 year wonder. Like the two reasons why I put Jameis above Cam Newton are for the fact that Jameis is younger. Jameis is only 26. Cam Newton's about to hit his 30s. Like he's about 28, 29 at this point. And for the fact that Jameis has been healthier. That being the bigger source. But he's gotten 2 contracts so far, so it's like, oh no. Jameis has gotten his one big 4-year contract that he had with them where it's like with a 5th-year option that they took off on him. So someone who is way too turnover prone between the most interceptions since 2016, the most total turnovers since 2016 for the fact that he's gotten about 30 fumbles, So he's a boom bust guy for them. And with the fact of Brady coming in, it's going to be kind of like flipping a 180 with Brady being very extra critical on making turnovers and making mistakes. So yeah, those same three teams, um, Patriots, Jaguars, Patriots, Jaguars, Chargers. I'm sure that one of them is probably going to the Chargers, and I'll say the other one's going to go to the Jaguars because I don't see Bill Belichick going after either one of these, even though he's had a he's he's had a deal of being able to bring out someone with kind of a troubled past and trying to build them back up. So, the Patriots could be a sleeper for Winston. Now, yeah, still in the NFC South. The surprise that I didn't think was going to end up leaving, but with all of this with everything that's happened, Von Bell of the Saints. Once the Saints signed Malcolm Jenkins to a 4-year, $32 million deal, everyone kind of knew they weren't going to be keeping Von Bell. One moment, there's going to be a quick flash that you'll see on the screen in just one moment. Sorry about that. It's starting to get a little later in the day, but Von Bell, he is a solid safety, more of a kind of a linebacker safety blend because he's not really a ball hawking safety. He's not going to get you that many turnovers. He's like the safeties that end up getting higher end money are the ones who are the ball hawking safeties that can, and those will get around like 12 to 14 million at max. And even with the salary cap increasing, the most that a lot of the top strong safeties end up getting, which that would be a position that is being replaced in New Orleans. That's usually only getting like 8 million, and with the salary cap going up, he's probably going to get around that 8-9 million range. And for the fact that I originally was going to think he was going to go to Carolina for the fact that they got rid of Eric Reed, former LSU first round pick to San Francisco, but also between him and between my actual projection being him going to Chicago, as Clinton Dix, their starting strong safety, is going from Chicago to Dallas to replace Jeff Heath, who's going from Dallas to Oakland, so to Las Vegas. But yeah, Chicago still has a decent bit of cap room, even if it's not on the top line. So he's probably going to be a safety that's going to end up kind of fitting right into their defense. Strong tackler, not great at getting turnovers. Now going into the top half of this, going into the top 5, one that is not really well known is Shelby Harris from the Broncos, for the fact that he was the best defensive lineman on their team last year, with a little respect to Derek Wolfe, who also had 7 sacks in the year. Harris is getting a lot of interest from around the league. One of the better pass rushers and interior D linemen that is still available. Him and one of the next ones on my list. I'll talk about him in a second. But Shelby Harris is still really young, still about to hit his prime. He's only 26. Had a solid season for the Broncos last year. 49 tackles, 8 for loss, 6 quarterback hits, 9 pass deflections, and 6 sacks. He's probably going to get still north of $10 million a year. Probably something a little bit more extended to like a 3-4 year deal. Maybe like 3 year, 33 mil, 4 year, 44 mil. Now, Houston has been needing some sort of pass rushing help outside J.J. Watt, and for the fact that Watt's kind of slipped down a step since his peak years, since Watt's now in his 30s, and they need someone that can work on the other end and also come in the middle. Just as another option to build on the defense, because they have the money this offseason, and their pass rush has been lackluster at best. But going on to the next one, the top pass rush specialist is Edge Everson Griffin from the Minnesota Vikings, who has 72 and a half sacks on his career in Minnesota for a 10-year career. But he's getting up in the age. He's 32 years old. I put him ahead of Shelby for the fact that Griffin's been more consistent, and yes, Shelby's been on more of an upswing, but despite Griffin getting hurt in 2018, only playing about parts of 11 games, he kind of rebuilt himself up last season, getting 8 sacks, and just being able to be a strong, consistent pass rush specialist in this case, but also actually making a lot of impact in pass deflections, because 17 pass deflections is kind of ridiculous for a D lineman. So he has very good timing, and if he was a bit younger, he'd probably get about $13 to $50 million a year. Now, with him being in his 30s at this point, 8 to 10 mil. And I was going to put him to Seattle because there had been talks between him and Seattle, but I will give another Seattle recommendation later on in this video. But I think he's going to go. If this wasn't the case, I probably would have swapped these two on where they're going. But then you go to the top defensive back, and really the only one that I felt deserved a extremely high grade for free agency left in the defensive backfield, and that's Logan Ryan. With his time in New England and his time in Tennessee, including the pick 6 that virtually ended Tom. Actually, that was the very last pass that Tom Brady passed as a New England Patriot. Now, he has been solid his entire career, but he's 29 right now. So teams may be a little bit hesitant on going on to a long-term contract, but he's one that he's a very strong slot cornerback, and he could be a number 2 for a team. But with 113 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 4 picks, a lot of 4s included on this, he's going to have a big cap hit that's going to be that's going to scare some teams off, some of the teams that don't have much room left. But one that once Detroit got rid of Quandre Diggs, sent him to Seattle, and the fact that Detroit got rid of Darius Slay, traded him to Philadelphia, they got in desperate need of some quality secondary help. And they now have plenty of money that they can end up spending on the likes of Logan Ryan. So he's probably going to end up in the Motor City with Detroit. That's what I believe. Now, for the only wide receiver in this entire list, as I was saying, Breshad Perriman is probably around 12 or 13 on it, but not really worth the mention. Robbie Anderson, yes, I know he cut off his head, but he was the number 1 for the Jets for the past 3-4 seasons. And he's the one that's been surprising that there hasn't been that much interest for him. Yes, he's had to deal with kind of more altercations off of kind of substance abuse, slight substance abuse. That was only one time. But still, 52 catches, 779 yards, 5 touchdowns. But the fact that the collective bargaining agreement made it to where that's not really that big of a factor anymore, he should end up generating some more interest. But really, you've heard rumblings of him in talks with Washington, and yes, I know there's limited availability to be able to end up talking and seeing anyone in person. I got that. But Anderson's going to be the top asking price for any wide receiver left on the market. Really, any of the top wide receivers in general. He's going to end up getting more money than you got for the bigger ones that have been signed, like the Emmanuel Sanders going to the Saints at a 2-year, $16 million deal. The Randall Cobb with a 3-year, $27 million deal from the Texans, which I don't get why. Like, I think the Saints got a deal. I think the Texans were complete idiots. But enough on that. But yeah, Robbie Anderson could for some teams be a solid number one, and would be a great number two for a lot of teams. Really, any team could use him as number two with a few exceptions. But he is going to take a cap hit of it's going to be north of $10 million a year. And that's starting to get into the area of being a true number one. Really, anything north of $10 million kind of gets you there. But for the fact that Vegas wants to get some little nice new pieces onto their squad, and yes, I know they've gotten about six free agents, but they still have the money to afford it. I think Anderson would fit pretty well in the big lights where the draft will be held. And then there's a number one overall pick in one of the drafts. I think it was back in 2014. And number one pick on this list, we got Jadeveon Clowney. So I was a little surprised whenever it seemed to be taking too long, where this is the biggest name on there that's still in the market that, like, he's going to end up asking for 20 plus million on it. And you've heard the fact that Seattle's kind of been a little bit hesitant on giving him that contract, even though he's been on the team. But really, with how much hype he was getting coming out of South Carolina's number one overall pick, he has been definitely a bit of a underachiever outside of really his last year in Houston and before he got traded to Seattle. But even with them having Clowney, and yes, he was their best pass rusher at the time, they were still a bottom five defense in getting a good pass rush and be able to get pressure on the quarterbacks. Yes, Clowney is their best option, and yes, they brought in Bruce Irvin as an edge specialist. But I honestly was expecting that Clowney was going to go somewhere else just because Seattle didn't want to pay him. But I've heard rumblings, I've looked through different reports saying that he's probably going to end up going back to Seattle. The contract hasn't been settled, but come early next week, you could see that deal being finalized. And I don't think he's worth it, but pass rushers aren't on a premium, so you gotta pay a pretty penny for it. Damn alliteration. But we're at the end of it, so thank y'all for watching this. If y'all like this, please like, subscribe. Please let anyone else know about it. I enjoy doing this. This is fun. I'll try to get y'all as much content as I can if I get enough resources to be able to build it up for y'all. But yeah, share us out the other one. And with that being said, I am the Contained Kunas. This is Stat7 Sports, and I'll see y'all next time. Be safe, y'all.